So that's definitely not about engineering, I can assure you. I have no experience in engineering. I even didn't pass our CTO exam to have access to our database. So that's how much I know about engineering. But I know some things about other stuff, also very important, I think, whenever you're building something or working with people. So let's start with the agenda, meaning what, why, and who. And I guess the menu, it's something that you get when you watch Chef's Table from Netflix in the background when you build your presentation. So today we have 4 courses. The first one is how I see problems and how I understand the world around me. Not only business world, and that's the downside of living by those rules that I'm going to show you. The second thing is obviously problems, and then solutions, obviously. And the last part is validation, meaning how I know that problems that I identified and the solutions that we introduced are okay. And just to sum up, to give you the one slide that's probably going to be the most important thing you're going to see on my presentation today. So why those things are important? So I try to balance being an asshole on the everyday life and being a nice guy, and that's very hard. And I'm going to move here just to give you some FaceTime with me as well. I think that problems are not unique in general, or at least majority of them are not unique. That thought is basically from math. In math, there are very few problems that are very unique, and many people are working to solve them. But in general, all math problems are solvable. And I think that, and that's the asshole part of me, that problems are not unique, so I don't treat anything that's happening in our company as a unique thing, unfortunately. So there's not too much space for drama and being, this kind of snowflake. But the soft part of me knows that whenever people experience things and they solve things and they solve problems, there should be this, the second step or the third step or the fourth step, sharing the solution and pushing people or challenging people or inspiring people to think, to disagree, to agree, to say, fuck off, this is not working, or we don't care, or we care, or whatever, right? Any reaction is good. This is the only thing that's going to be kind of a promotional. So I'm this VP of project. That means that I work on many different layers and on many different areas every day. And the thing is that if you don't agree with me, you want to ask me questions afterwards, ask me them during the network or Q&A session. But if you will not find me during that time, email me. I always answer emails, and I think Kuba can confirm that. Sometimes with a delay, but I always answer emails. And if you are interested, what I find amusing or what I'm building out of Legos, you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram, because I'm a huge Lego geek. Okay, so now how I see problems. I don't know if that's going to resonate with most of you or some of you, but this handsome fella, it's Józef Tischner, one of Polish, I think, most famous philosophers, if you can say that philosophers can be famous. That's the only Polish slide, I promise. So he saw the 3 types of truth, right? The first one is basically holy truth. The second one is your truth in very light translation. And the third one is basically bullshit, right? And I adapted that to my understanding or to our approach to problem solving and to thinking about problems. And I see world in those 3. Basically, I can divide everything in my life, professional or not, in those 3 groups, right? Not a problem or bullshit, right? And today, I definitely am going to talk about those 2 things. though this is not going to talk about those two things. So let's go there. Problems that we had in UXPin, just to try to boil it down to more feasible material for you, is, and my favorite one, we were always late. And I thought that I'm going to put real quotes without people saying them. I don't want my ass to be kicked in the office when I return to Gdańsk tomorrow. So I'm not going to tell you who said those words, but people who said them, they're aware of them. So that's my favorite one, from being always late, how we can be late to second week into the project. That happened. More details later. So the second problem that we had, that I identify, that we had like very centralized planning and management, whatever you want to call it. Basically, we were kind of like North Korea of developing shit, right? Which is not good. And I heard this. What now, bossman? Probably that's some slang from prisoners. That's what I heard. The second thing, or the third thing, is scope creep. Probably most of you is fully aware of being in scope creep. It can be boiled down to those three things, right? That something should be added, something should be removed, or something just was discovered just 1 week before the deploy. The fourth thing is information creep, and it's basically the same kind of creep, but from the information side. As first two are sort of funny, the third one is really depressing. I don't know. I know that you're using Slack, so you're fully aware of @channel. What does it do, right? It's not fun, and especially when you think that we have offices in Gdańsk and in Mountain View, which is -9 hours, meaning that when someone do @channel, I get notification at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., right? Whatever, with some important or unimportant things, but it happened, and I broke the pilot. All right. And basically, inefficiency. That's the most sad thing, and this is totally true. Hopefully, I'm not going to be fired for saying those things, but basically, we wanted to do something, or we were assured that we're going to deliver something in 8 to 10 weeks, roughly. And 45 weeks later, that's not a joke, we basically finally delivered that, right? So you can count how many times we were wrong. Standardless. I Googled, and that's probably a word, I think, because I sometimes create words when I don't know what I want to say. So I Googled that, and that's apparently a word. When you have very experienced people and very smart people, that's the probably most common thing, right? Why we need standards? We don't need that. I don't need to estimate things. I don't need to plan things. I don't need to decomposite the task, the user story, the epic, whatever, right? It's not because of bad intentions, or it's not because of arrogance. It's just because of, being very smart individual. And the bonus problem is when you add all those things that I just mentioned, you're going to have a shit ton of frustration, right? It's not going to be nice and pleasant, and people aren't going to be happy, and they're going to leave you, or they're not going to be eager to work with you, or they're just going to be, energyless, or just not engaged at all. And let's go to the solution thing. So my background is in psychology and philosophy, so obviously I put diagnosis there as a very important part of my worldview and my approach to work. And the problem with diagnosing things is that it's very counterintuitive, right? So whenever there's a crisis, and imagine whatever crisis in your life, very professional or very private, huge or small, it's always that we are wired as human beings to react, right? Whenever, I don't know, I will throw this bottle from this desk, someone will try to grab it, that's an instinct, right? And we behave this in the same way whenever we do whatever in our professional life. So whenever there's a bug on production, whatever, it's maybe someone eager to fix it, right? And that's a good thing. The problem with the very meta level or long-term or huge problems is that acting is not always the right thing, right? We should act and we should do our day-to-day job, but the problem is that it's not going to fix the underlying cause, right? If you watch Dr. House, he always tries to figure out what's really wrong with the patient, right? Not what they say, not what the charts say, not what other doctors said in the past. He always tries to understand underlying cause, and doing a diagnosis is basically doing this underlying cause, right? Oh. So for me, very natural thing, whenever there's a big problem or significant problem, is to analyze and synthesize whatever is there. Try to analyze the problems. That's how I discovered all those 6 problems and boil them down to very easy to share thoughts. Because also one of our problems in tech, I think, is generating all those words, all these buzzwords, communicating with words that we created because we want to be very efficient in our work. But in the end, it sort of creates this very safe bubble, right? So whenever you have sprint planning, I don't know what roles do you have in your everyday job, but whenever you have sprint planning, you have this retro, you have this summary, postmortem, whatever. You always try to voice your concerns or voice your problems in this very professional way, and then there is delivered to your stakeholders or to your client or to whoever, and it sort of gives you this idea that everything is okay in the end, right? So I like to speak, as you probably imagine and already figured out, very straightforward, and I'm quite brutal when I communicate my word views. So after the diagnosis, right? So whenever I understood what are the problems, I thought that just giving people solution or giving people the description how they should solve that problem, it's very short-term thinking, right? So I thought that maybe we should start from the values. It's very hard to craft them, but whenever they're there and they're solid, it's very hard to really just destroy them or throw them away. And it takes time to coach, mentor, or teach people values, and it's a tough job. But I like to basically probably build those like tech kaiku, right, for my team. And I always repeat those things endlessly on every single sync meeting, every single weekly, every single one-on-one, whatever, that facts over opinions. Opinions are important, and smart people opinions are awesome, right? But they're only opinions, right? And we should only make decisions based off facts, or be aware that there are no facts given, so we should just make a decision. But facts are the first thing that my team and teams that I work with are searching for. The same thing is with data. Data is hard. My professor from university said, and even wrote a book titled "The Numbers Don't Know from Where They're Coming From," meaning numbers are numbers, and only people give meaning to numbers or give meaning to data. So whenever we do an A/B test, we do a whatever test, we launch something and measure something, numbers are just numbers, right? And they can be manipulated, if you know what I mean. So smart people in big organizations, they're smart enough to put numbers or measuring systems that are going to prove success overnight, right? Imagine, that's the news from yesterday, Microsoft launched this Slack clone, whatever the name of that is, and they claiming that they have the 300 million users, right? They achieve it overnight in pre-installing that on within the new update, right? Which is okay, which is smart, and I appreciate this kind of thinking. But in the end, it proves nothing, right? Yeah. And the methodological agnostics means that I don't care about the name of the framework, about the certificate, about what you have on your wall or types of training you got, meaning if that was like PMI or Agile in project management or whatever. I don't care from where the rules or solutions comes. I just care about resolving issues. And now the rules, and this is the same haiku kind of approach. That's probably, you know, unfulfilled poet in me. So I have there basically are 4 rules that I work. I started to work with those rules with my PM teams. And the case is, whenever project manager, that started with project management, right? Whenever project manager spotted a problem and wanted to solve it, or that solution was important to project or release or whatever, it was that project manager's job to solve it. But with this freedom with solving it with whatever method, whatever solution, I always say that beer with the person or beer with the team, or just doing design critic, whatever in that spectrum, right? That's okay. That's whatever people want to do, they're going to do. However they're going to solve problem, it's okay. But freedom isn't free, and that's a kind of philosophy from bumper stickers you can get in the US, and I saw it in the US, and that's amazing, like slogan. It's probably something about war in context of the United States, but here is more, whenever people are solving problems, there's only one cost, or the currency is explaining that, showcasing that, doing postmortem or a case study or whatever the hell you want to name it. They need to prove why this particular solution worked, right? And that's a bonus. If that's scalable, that's a part of our framework. We call our very mix of agile, waterfall and PMI, we call it the framework, and whenever a solution is scalable and it's solving a problem, it's a part of our framework. So it's very patchworky, which is also apparently a word, and I didn't discover it. Okay, and the strategy, I was asked by our CEO to write a strategy, and the strategy was basically 2 hours of work when I went through all of this, right? So the strategy wasn't first, it was the last step that I took to shape our way of thinking in development, in product development. And, sorry, I'm losing the, oh, shit, yeah. So that's the original strategy that I wrote, right? And if you can see it, the first part is diagnosis, which is basically what I already told you, guidelines and coherent actions, which are basically when and what and who will do what, right, in our organization. And that's a document from, I think, November 2015. And it's, apart from coherent actions, is still very accurate, right, in terms of solutions to the problems. And I'm not that smart by birth, so I stole this framework from Richard Ramlet, which is a very smart guy who helped many companies, including Apple. He helped, I think he started as a NASA employee and then just became like this legendary strategy guy in tech and in many other industries. I highly recommend this book. I don't have any referral link, but just think about me when you're going to purchase it. And the validation, right? That's the last part. So I don't like to brag about numbers and whatever, but so since we revamp our framework and revamp our approach and revamp our product development, we had 16 months in a row when we deliver at least one significant update. And significant update is not something that we consider significant. Significant update is something that our clients claims is important for them and it's valuable for them and it's solving some issues or bringing basically more money to the company by attracting new clients. That was the first team I worked with. The second team was a tech support. which is led by this very expressive guy, one of my favorite people on planet Earth, Bartek. And when he first heard that I want to have average time to resolution of a bug down to 48 hours, he basically flipped the table, right? Lose his shit and said, no fucking way. It's undoable. We will not do it. You cannot do it, right? Even if all of us will work on those issues, on their problems, it's not doable. And then only 10 weeks later, roughly a quarter, he was like, yeah, we did it. Done, right? That's basically how Bartek works, which is super. He's always very negative at the beginning and super positive at the end, which is the perfect, if you can imagine that as a graph, that's the way it should be. And the last team, and the team I work currently with, are awesome people from our online sales. We divide our sales into two channels: inside sales, which are basically sales rep, account executives, SDRs, and all this thing. And online sales whenever you're going to purchase our subscription through the website. And basically they work on three core areas. I didn't want to, overdo it with the content, but it's content strategy, conversion rate, and nurturing programs, campaigns, whatnot. And their problem is not solved yet, but we are getting there. So at the end of last year, they were able to cover maybe one area in 70–80%. And right now we have very clear schedule and very clear path to cover all those three areas without adding any people, right? That's the important part. We didn't solve it with just misery and suffering, which is also a solution to every single problem that people have. So to sum it up, I want you to remember or take away 5 things that I think are important. Challenge me, disagree, tell me that I'm wrong and why. That will be perfect. And what experience you have, that will be awesome. I think that problems should shape any framework. We shouldn't take anything given from the market or from the wisdom of the IT. We should be very focused on the problems we want to solve, not on the implementation of the framework we love or we think we love. Because, I don't know what the expression is in English, probably the same, but the grass is always greener, right, in our neighbor yard. So every single framework or every single tool is always sexier than the one that we are using right now. I think that the responsibility must be distributed, and it doesn't mean that we're going to build this pyramid, right, when there is some head of something and just misery all over the place with people responsible for different things. I don't trust this is a model for IT anymore. I think more people responsible for different topics or different areas and the close things, more like product managers, are shaped than anything else. I think problems should be as simple as possible. There is a White Stripes song, right? And the intro is about the squirrel or something. And the song is about the woman that has this fundamental problem with living. And the square was her inspiration. The square just harvests nuts over winter and just one nut at a time. And that's how I think the problems should be considered. If you cannot divide it, almost like a user story or a task, that's a perfect problem, right? Something you can solve, something you can think you can solve. I had a full rant on the poverty and the word hunger about that, but I skipped that from obvious reasons. I think that the majority of the time, 80-20 kind of rule, should be diagnosis and then shaping the solution and then going to actions, right? Because if you don't get your problems right, you will not get your solution right. And I know that sounds very high level, but I think it's adjustable to teams, to people, to companies. So it's not that, only product development narrowed. And freedom isn't free. That's just awesome bumper sticker. I think it's very good. And freedom isn't free. Meaning if you want to give people, your team, your teammates, your peers, your colleagues, whatever you call them, freedom to solve problems, to work, to deliver their own ideas and solutions, you need to have something. There need to be some currency in your team. I don't think alcohol is a currency. That was a currency for some time in our company, which is very funny and sad day after. But there must be a currency. In my teams, the currency is proving that you're right. Not you personally who was right, but I don't give a shit. Couldn't care less who solved the problem, right? I want to see these people not caring about their egos, about their careers in this way that every single mistake will be like this scar on my career or whatnot. It doesn't matter, right? We shouldn't care about that. That's going to limit us. I once worked with a very smart CTO who said that what put the biggest shadow on his day-to-day work, on his day-to-day operations, on his day-to-day decisions was his mortgage. Because now he is afraid on every single meeting of the management of the company that if he's going to fail or he's going to say something, not right, he's going to be fired or whatever, right? And what about his monthly payments? So there must be a freedom, right? And there need to be the space to fail or the space to not be right, because being right is not the goal. And thank you, and have a great rest of the event.
Thanks, Daniel. And right now we have questions and answers sessions. So do you have any questions for Daniel? So I can ask the first one.
Thank you.
To warm you up, guys. So my question is that we can have entrepreneurs here on our audience that are currently running their own companies. And I wonder if your framework for solving problems is something that evolved during the existence of UXPin, or you think that such values and so on should be, put straight from the very beginning of the company? Oh yeah, if you're going to screw up the basics, right, the values in your company, the culture, as they say, that's not going to be a good thing. Think Uber whenever you're going to have this question, right? Uber screwed up the culture, and now they pay the tax of screwing up the culture. The same was with the insurance startup. I forgot the name. Whatever. Zenefits. Yes, thank you. So Zenefits is the same thing, right? Sex on the staircase and use condoms in the bathroom. That was the culture of Zenefits. And paying the tax of that is very unpleasant for the board of directors, for the employees, for everyone from the top to the bottom, from the bottom to the top, right? So how I discovered that? I'm just wired this way, right? So I was raised like this in many ways, and I read a lot and not too much over tech and this Silicon Valley kind of books when there is a solution to every single problem on earth. I like to read about biology, history, strategy, botany, whatever. I think that there is more knowledge and kind of like gems of ideas there than in all those I know how to do shit, right, kind of books, which are very popular. And I was the 10th employee of UXPin, and I don't know, I never, the first time, it took me 2 years, two and a half years to craft it as a thought, as a document, right? Share that, and I'm still crafting it, as you can see, because that's probably the 4th iteration of that presentation, right? So I think you need to find the people wired like you. You need to find people. There's this rule about going for a beer with the gal or a guy, and if there is a flow on the beer, then you just hire these people, and then people challenge that this is not what it's about. This is about skill set, blah blah blah. It's about beer, It's about beer. If you can talk with someone, if you can share thoughts with someone, if you can say, this is not the best thing, right? And it's not personal, that's great. And I think that the beer test or whatever it's called, that's a very good approach to that. So I think that you need just to find people. If you want to shape your own company, you need to find people that are thinking in many ways like you. And then when you shape teams, you need to find basically Dr. House team. I'm a huge fan of Dr. House. If you're not aware, Dr. House always had a person who always agrees with him, always disagree with him, and the third that always care about the patient, right? And that's basically my lineup in project management right now. I have a guy who always challenges me, always says no. I have a yes guy, and I have a person who always cares about customers, right? And this setup is always very dense. You need to learn how to manage conflicts and all those things, right? But that's totally learnable. But whenever you shape a company, you need to find people like you. Whenever you shape team, you need to find people that are very much thinking about different spectrum of the business.
Thanks. So, do we have any other questions? Don't be shy.
There's a question.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
How do you take the decision? It's a bit unrelated, but how do you take the decisions for those 16 noticeable product?
Oh yeah, yeah. So probably I should put like 8 problem, right? That was me. People are unscalable. You cannot scale people, even smartest, best teammates. Think about the best person in your team, on your team, right? Engineer, designer, whoever, in whatever part of the spectrum of the business, right? If you consider someone good, imagine that person need to work for 16 hours a day, right? 5 weeks or 6 or 7 weeks day a week. That person will be burned out very fast, and that was me, right? I managed too many things at the same time, and I was done, right? Friday mornings or sometimes even Wednesdays evening, I couldn't make any rational decision, right? I was done with the, energy for a week. So you need to hire people, and that's the team part that I mentioned before, right? It's whenever you are sure that your approach will work, then you need to build a team around that, right? And you need to learn to not micromanage them, but also not to forget how to micromanage people, because that's useful from time to time, right? Unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not judging.
Okay. So, any other?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if there are any dramatic differences between running the teams in Poland and in the US.
Oh yes. Oh, that's my second presentation for today, basically. No, there is a huge difference, culture-wise, mentally-wise. Meaning people from New York are different than people from California, definitely. Like, it's a whole continent, right? So imagine people from Spain and people from Moscow, right? That's not that basically human beings, but yeah, there are differences, right? So it's basically like that. And yeah, running teams in the US is swearing is tough. You cannot swear a lot. At least they're going to swear, but even if they swearing, you can swear. Being very Polishly direct is unacceptable. Being Polishly normal, meaning sad for Californian. So whenever I'm just normal, right, I'm sad in their perception of word, which is normal, right? People are more cheerful in California. It's warmer. It's the view is better, right? They're not starting their day with 40 centimeters of snow on their car, right? And 3 months in a row of rain during the summer, right? So they think differently. Plus, and I don't believe I'm going to say it, but basically there's generation things, right? When you have like generation X, Y, whatever, I don't know, I don't keep track on that. There's a difference, right? I'm 31, and people like who are 21 in Poland and 21 in California, those are like the 3 tribes, right? Those are very different people. very differently like raised, different perspectives, different values. You need to understand that people in the US are like we think they are, right? They really cherish all those things. So for example, and that's the closing joke, we had this, my first trip to the Mountain View office, and we talk about me and my colleague from Poland. We were very surprised that police announced on Facebook where they're going to check your alcohol level in the evening. So basically they share, hello, hi, we are Mountain View Police, and today evening we're going to be here and here and here, and if you're going to pass by, we're going to check your alcohol level. And I was like, is that a fake account or is it a kind of joke, right? In Poland, we have these guys in the, in the bushes, right? In the morning, like tactical uniform and trying to hunt you down with this +5 on your meter, whatever. And in the US is different. And the answer from our colleague there was, you cannot entrap people. You cannot trap people in the US. You cannot do this kind of, we're going to surround you and going to check you. You cannot do it. The law is like that, right? And the law and the culture shape how we think, and they think in very different way, which is not a bad thing, right? They learn some sadness from us, from Poland, and we learn some happiness from them, and we are kind of like balancing that. So this is how it is, at least in our company.
Okay. So I think that we can go to Susan.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, guys.